So as you heard, my name is Saundra Pelletier, and I'm the Chief Executive of Women Care Global and of EvoFem. And Women Care Global is a nonprofit, but we're also a hybrid model. And why that really matters is that we really care that every woman, no matter who she is and no matter where she lives, will be able to decide when and if and how often she has children. And we're able to impact that through a sustainable supply chain. And I say that we focus on the unsexiness of the supply chain because it can be ever so boring at times, but it's also ever so critical. Because sustainable access to family planning and contraception is really the answer to sustainable change in every economy. And you know, what good is it to have access if you can't afford it? And what good is it to have access if you can't rely on the quality of it? And what good is it to have access if it's not sustainable access? And I'm going to talk a lot more about that when we talk about leadership in public health. And as you also heard, I'm the CEO of EvoFem, which is an interesting transition that happened. And it's truly a marriage, an arranged marriage of sorts, of a public-private partnership. And I really believe that that's going to be the ongoing answer to sustainable change. Both organizations looked at ourselves and said, where are our vulnerabilities? And let's try to not create core competencies that we don't have. Let's try to partner and marry with another organization so we can have the biggest impact. So EvoFem develops innovative products. We have the supply chain in order to take those products into the hands of the women that need them most. And then together, we really feel like we're going to be able to continue to make a much bigger impact than we could have alone. So I did want to also just take a moment and step back and tell you a little bit about how it is that I got the wonderful privilege of being here today and leading these two organizations. I actually started out in Maine, in a town called Caribou, Maine, the northernmost city in the U.S., the furthest point that you travel to from where I live now in San Diego, if that tells you how much I thought I fit in Caribou, Maine. My mother's like, what happened to you? People think that we did bad things. I'm like, well, if the shoe fits, no. So in Caribou, Maine, though, very, very rural, girls, it was really assumed they had two choices, who they married and how many children they were going to have. And that was just about it. My mom grew up in a farming family with over 10 brothers and sisters and chickens and cows and sheep and all the amenities like outdoor plumbing. And so she really felt that cooking and cleaning and domestic things were never going to get me out of Caribou, so she taught me none of those things. Don't come to my house for dinner. You will definitely be hungry. But she really cared passionately about really focusing on trying to fight against society norms. I did things like take arc welding and took fly tying instead of cooking and sewing. Not because I wanted to fly fish, nor did I want to become a welder, but I wanted to prove that girls could do that. And I wanted to prove that I could do that. But as I continued to do that and sort of fight against norms, I also recognized pretty early on that I was doing it in a safe environment. What was really going to happen to me? I was going to get a talking to, you know, maybe I might get in a little bit of trouble, but nothing really profound was going to happen. And when we look at the work that we do in these developing markets, as a lot of you know, when women want to fight against the societal norms, sometimes they take their lives into their own hands, literally take their lives into their own hands. And we see women that are willing to risk their life, not to have another unwanted baby. We see women that walk a day pregnant with a baby on their back and a baby on their side, and they stand in line and they wait for contraception because they don't want to have 6 and 7 children. They wait for contraception because they want a quality of life for the children that they have. They want education for those children. Women, they want contraception because they want to work. They do. And so the exciting part about being able to run EvoFem is that they have two products, very different products. One is feminine hygiene. And at first, you know, a lot of eyebrows raised, like, why do you care about a reusable menstrual cup? Well, we don't have the same luxuries, obviously, when you're in the developing world as you do here. We can go to any pharmacy and have 40 choices. It's a little overwhelming, but when you're in a developing market and you start your period and have your menses, maybe you're using a rag that you reuse. And if you don't have that option, you drop out of school and you drop out of work. So reusable menstrual cup is a dignity campaign that we're launching. And for every cup that you buy in the U.S., we're donating cups in an effort to keep women at work and keep girls in school. And they also have an innovative product that's not yet launched called Amphora. Because if you're sitting in a developing world and you take a product and you have a side effect, and one, if you're brave enough to even get it, and then you have the courage to take it, which is usually against a religious belief system, and if your husband finds out, you're going to be probably badly beaten. If you do all of those things and then you have a side effect and you have no education and you can't read and you can't write, it's very, very scary. And you think, oh my goodness, I'm being punished. And so we're launching a product called Amphora. It's hormone-free, it's woman-controlled, it's pericoital. So when women cannot win the negotiation about condom use in the markets where we work, they don't have to worry about that as much. So we're really excited. So it's wonderful that a small nonprofit called Women Care Global has access to these amazing products. And the reason that we do is because our ability to really say we need to care about social good. And even though, yes, you have your shareholders, EvoFem, that you have to care about, it doesn't just feel good and look good and sound good. Your shareholders will probably respond very positively that you care a little bit about social good. And they said, we agree. So it's been a really, really nice opportunity. But going back to sort of my long and winding road to get here, when I started out my first career, it was in private sector pharmaceuticals. And it was working for a company that launched the first birth control pill, GD Searle, and that was called Enovid. And I actually thought I was going to be a broadcast journalist. I wanted to be Connie Chung. She was more popular back then. And when the interviews came, the pharmaceutical companies that came to interview said, you know, it's going to be really tough for you to get a break. And, you know, we have this great package. And while you're interviewing for these other jobs, you could be promoting women's health to OBGYNs. And it's so empowering. And you get a company car and you get a bonus. And I'm like, okay, that sounds pretty good. I'm going to do that. And 20 years later, I was in women's health. And I had the opportunity to work on a global franchise for women. And the things that I learned were incredibly shocking. And a lot of the things that I learned, we did a lot of quantitative and qualitative market research on women from puberty through menopause. And we really tried to answer Sigmund Freud's question, what do women want? And I became very popular with my male friends. They're like, just tell us anything, just throw us a bone. We have no idea, you know. And what was really interesting is that women held in, no matter where they lived and no matter what their socioeconomic status, they cared passionately about the quality of life for their children. They cared that they were able to choose. They wanted control over their own bodies. But the interesting thing that was a little shocking too is that even when we said to women, cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women, like, yeah, we hear that, but we don't necessarily care about that. Like, okay, well, should we talk about breast cancer? Yeah, not so much. And the interesting thing that we learned too is women cared about aging and they cared about loss of libido. And when we really peeled back the onion, it wasn't that they cared that they looked any worse or even that they cared that they had less of a sex drive. They cared about how was that going to impact their relationship with their partner. Were they going to have a different relationship with their partner as a result of their own changes? And that made me really angry and really frustrated. And I thought, how could this possibly be? We need to be more selfish. We have to focus on things that, you know, our own health. Why is everything about others? And it was a really big aha moment for me because I really tried to spend a lot of time thinking about the martyr mentality and pleasers. And do women take the right kinds of calculated risks? And certainly to move their careers forward. And I had 3 really valuable lessons as I tried to maneuver my way up the corporate ranks. And the first lesson was calculated risk, that encouraging women that it's okay to do it. Not reckless risk, but risk that involves making changes and traveling to places and contorting and doing things that might be a little unpopular and might not be conservative and might not seem well organized, but really jumping at opportunities as frequently as absolutely possible so that you can well round your career, so that you can say you've done a variety of different things. Forgetting about labels because, it may not feel good that your title is assistant. In my opinion, that's a huge mistake.